how many people actually come, the average number of people on a Sunday morning worship service is 20 people. The average number of people, and we provided a chart that sets forth the number of people in attendance at the various in the various classes throughout each portion of the day. For example, in the week of March 29th through April 4th, on Sunday there were 8 people at the 9:45 classroom. There were 11 people. This is total people now. If you went to 9:45 and you stayed and you went to the 11 o'clock class, you counted as 2 different people. It's a head count for each different hour. So there were 9, then 11, then at the 6 o'clock there were 11, or at 4 o'clock there were 11. The other high would be on Sunday, and on Saturday, the highest time period was, or the highest week was April 5 through April 11. There were 6 at the 9:45, there were 12 at the 1:15, and there were 13 at the 4 o'clock. So if you look at how many people actually have attended classes, then those numbers aren't cars. Those are people, and a lot of times because they have introductory classes that may have introductory 1, 2, and 3, or something along those order in the same day, then the same person could stay all day or could stay all weekend.
All right, if we're going to follow your argument that we're going to use sanctuary ratios for the entire building, the 43,000 square feet, is your client prepared to put fixed seating into all this office and classroom space similar to what they would be doing in the sanctuary and eliminating any other seating?
I'm not following what you're saying. We're not proposing fixed seating even in the chapel.
Well, in the sanctuary, the basis for the parking ratios is there's fixed seating.
No, there are 2. One is fixed seating, one's based on non-fixed seating. We use the non-fixed seating. In the Lutheran example, they use the fixed seating for their 8,000 square foot facility, and yet in their letter of intent, they say it's really non-fixed seating. We call them today, it's going to be chairs, and in their letter of intent, they indicate that the facility will be used for theatrical performance, for athletic events, for this, for that, but they'll be in place 95% of the time. Well, that's certainly true in our case, but in other words, there are 2 different ratios. Believe me, we'll work out a whole lot better if we do fixed seating and call out and say that ours is fixed seating. Because of that, in the Lutheran example, they would need an extra, I think it was 80 spaces that they don't have, based on their letter of intent.
Largest assembly room, or largest sanctuary room?
Yes.
Mr. Galloway, are you saying that in reality, if we follow your line of reasoning, that you would only really need 46 spaces on that site for that building?
No, sir. What I'm saying is that under the City of Sandy Springs ordinance, that we would be required to provide 46 spaces. We have 82 spaces there, and we will make provision if we need to for off-site spaces. But to me, and I mean, you're a land use scholar, there's a big difference in a governmental regulation that is arbitrarily applied. You can't arbitrarily apply it to this situation if you're not going to do it to the Lutheran church or the Methodist church or the Baptist church down the street. And nowhere, to my knowledge, have they been required to provide parking for their sanctuary, their Sunday school facilities, and their offices at the same time. And granted, most of the time the offices aren't open during that time period, but most of the time there is Sunday school going on, same time the facility, chapel's being used, but you're parking it based on the chapel. In this situation, same thing's going to be occurring, but what the staff is saying is, in your situation, we're going to require that you provide parking for every use all the time. That's not right, and that's not fair. And so what you need to apply the ordinance the way it is being applied, everybody has an expectation for that. They spent a lot of money. They got a huge due diligence report. An engineering firm did a huge due diligence report. An architectural firm came in and did a follow-up one. They bought this thing based on the fact that the parking ratio was X, and they met it. And so they didn't have to worry about that, to the extent that they want, because they have an event there, because of some special event or whatever, they need to provide additional parking, then they can do that. Or they can go off-site, which is their intent to do if they have events that are larger than the 200, it's really 173, 176 capacity of the chapel. Their intent is to go off-site for large events. And that's what they do today, and that's what they intend to do in the future. So
what you're saying to me is that if somebody wants to get around our definition, they come in with a sanctuary that has seating for 10 people and call that the sanctuary, and they could have 30,000 square feet of office space. And we're going to only require parking for the 1,000 square feet in the sanctuary or less.
sounds like
our definition may be wrong. And you may
sounds
be
like the
right.
ordinance needs to be changed. That's what I'm suggesting.
I won't disagree with that. I think we bought a Fulton County ordinance that we should have left behind. But
Well,
nevertheless,
But that's the ordinance you have, and you gotta apply the ordinance you have. And to say that the provision that talks about multi-use and that staff has, can look at each individual use, okay, that's fine in the multi-use facility where you've got concourse that has many different uses, and you're gonna say, okay, the office has to be parked at this, the restaurants, or whatever. In this situation, how are we going to say that the church office is not the church? How is it not a part of the church? How is the sanctuary not part of the church? How are the classrooms not part of the church? There's no formal education that's going on. It's not the result of federal or state regulation. They don't get a degree.
some of us asked that question about the Lutheran Church when it came up. But you're right. Point's well taken.
Well, Mr. Chairman, there's been a lot of conversation about numbers, and I don't know, sometimes numbers can not send the right message. But also a lot of conversation. I don't hear Nancy, but every application stands on its own. So all of this discussion about other situations, in my view, are not exactly on task. But my question to you is, this application and the argument for the applicant is that the staff didn't calculate the numbers correctly and didn't apply the church standard to that. I'd like the staff response to how you came up with that.
This is, as the applicant's attorney did state in a meeting, the distribution of the uses in the building is not that of a traditional church that you would see in Sandy Springs, and we acknowledge that, and he acknowledges that. The staff's concern and the discussions that we had with the city attorney related to the relationship of those numbers. As you know, the ordinance provides for the ability to do the impact analysis on a variety of issues, including traffic and parking, that relate to a use. And we have the ability, and you have the ability, to do conditions of zoning which address impacts of a particular use. The staff's analysis of the parking is based on the information provided by the applicant. The staff cannot assume that the church is not going to grow. The staff has to assume that the church building, the total building, will be used. And so with the information that was provided by the applicant, we made our best effort to determine how that space might be used. We are perfectly open to an additional study from the applicant, which would